The Opinion with Michael J. Today's topic is Trump's divide and conquer politics is strongly represented in Canada, in Canadian politics. And what do I mean by that? Conservative parliamentary behaviors of the Conservative Party, and which will be furthermore accentuated when Pierre Poilievre arrives to be able to participate on the floor. This is my prediction, and we'll see. Now, what's really at issue, and this is what people do not understand, is the fuel driving this Maple MAGA North, which is MAGA in the South, and this embracing of Trump and accepting a guy like Trump's behavior, which should not be accepted whatsoever. But the fuel driving this phenomena is as follows. Find identity by your politics. And that's what's happening. Like I've got up here, Elevate Podcast. Yesterday I did one on Moose on the Loose. You've got Juno News. You've got many other YouTube, partisan conservative or conservatives representing as truth news. And all they're doing is parroting party political ideologies as hidden is divide and conquer separation politics, which is all this is. Here we are on July 1. It's only 2 months after the last election, and it's been relentless, and we're still seeing it. And furthermore, let's go to the main screen here, and I'll just show you, just in the comments, of this Elevate podcast. This is just 5 hours ago. Today's July 1, Canada Day. Already it's got almost 16,000 views. 3.1 thousand thumbs up. And here we got. What you got? Thank Trump for getting rid of the DST, Digital Service Tax. Saving Canadians tax money. Thank you. Like, how naive are you? That tax is taxing big American corporations that are avoiding to pay tax, that are avoiding to contribute to your economy, and are actually taking proprietary information from sources that were Canadian-based and putting them out of business. Like, you really do not get how the food chain really works. Furthermore, you fail to understand you got a behemoth to the south, which is out of control, exerting its will on everyone else in the world in ways that's never been seen before since the end of the Second World War. And you're further encouraging this behavior, and you just don't realize how it's affecting the United States because you're oblivious to what's really happening. You see only one side of the story. You don't see the other side of the story. So here, Carney is not a politician. He has no idea what he's doing. Meanwhile, in this podcast here by Elevate today, he's saying just capitulate to the Americans. They're just too big. They can do what they want. Just capitulate to them. Meanwhile, there's other ways and other levers that have been utilized by Carney that are oblivious to this conservative ideology, Maple MAGA North. Used to be a conservative, now it's Maple MAGA North. to actually how things have been manipulated in ways that make Canada actually having some cause and effect. But it's beyond the comprehension, because the awareness of the people is at a level that they're not cognitively aware. And it's really just as simple as that. And here a guy says, willfully ignorant is the Canadian worst trait. And this is where we see willful ignorance right here. We're seeing it right here. You're capitulating to the U.S. at your expense. You got to understand, what's the motivating force of this guy Trump? Like, we've never seen a president like him in the history of the United States of America. Full stop. He's motivated by self-interest and greed. That's it. He has no plan. Always motivated by his self-interest and greed. So there is no plan other than what serves him. And that's why you have chaos politics. And this is creating an issue around the world. And then, you know, people get hung up on, this is where the divide and conquer effect comes into play. They get hung up on zero mention from Carney about cutting wasteful spending. Well, this is what you get. This is what people get sidetracked on. You miss the real issues and what's really going on. And wasteful spending. You seen what happened in the United States with Doge. They didn't save anything, barely a drop in the bucket, and are creating havoc that's going to be irreparable to the operations of the United States of America. And you're seeing it already, but you're not cognitively aware of it because you've limited yourself to exposing yourself to certain outlets that provide certain ways of representing, and you don't see any other way, so you have no comparatives. And when you have no comparatives, how are you going to create a perspective that is self-serving overall versus just within a narrow scope? And it's really where it's at. And then here we have liberal supporters can come up with whatever excuse they want. We all know what happened. He caved with elbows down. And that's just complete ignorance there. Because all you're doing is pandering to the ego. It's got nothing to do with actually what's relevant. None of these people that are commenting have ever done any negotiations. All you're going from a perspective of a Darwinian ideology of survival of the fittest. And you should, by now, have had enough of power over power way of operating and conducting your affairs. Doesn't serve anybody, just creates pain and suffering, and there's no need. It's very simple to change things into a different way. Why do you go into a pain and suffering? You want to be the victim, you want to be the hero, you want to be the villain, you want to play all these parts. And Carney is a one-man show out of control. Right. I live in Ottawa. My fear is that Trump wasn't even include us in the 51st state. You don't want to be. FIFA is worried about having the World Cup down in the States because people that want to come and watch the World Cup might end up being friggin' in El Salvador, Alcatraz, or some other jail and who knows where. Like, you just don't get it. You do not see the bigger picture. Why do you think Trump want Carney to win? No. Smith went down there to plead for him to stop saying what he's saying because we need Pierre Poilievre, who's going to capitulate to the American way of running the world, cozying up to Russia, and let's just friggin' use a big club to make our way known. You know, And then Carney is running Canada like he is CEO, which is autonomy. That is not the parliamentary system, not allowed, right. You don't pay attention, sir. Or ma'am, or whatever, ma'am, maybe. There's nothing to be happy about in Canada today. The Canada I know doesn't exist. What Canada are you talking about? Nothing to celebrate in the birth of Canada today, because right now it doesn't feel like a Canada that I used to know. And most Canadians voted for this. They love it. They'll vote for it again and again. Imagine this. Several fighters in the ring. Canada, the only one with his hands tied in the back, and everybody else, other countries, including the States, bashing the hell out of it. Right. This is how I feel to have our incompetent government not doing a thing, for 3 months. It's only been 2 months. A lot has happened. A lot more is going to happen. You were warned during the election process in Canada that this is going to be very trying times, but yet you just don't pay attention. And then this is the best video yet. Well done. Right. Well, we used to be kind of nice. Even the Americans thought we were, but there was this anti-American sentiment out there. Yeah, travel to the United States. Take a Cuban wife. Take a Spanish-speaking wife. Have some derogatory things about J.D. Vance, and you're going to end up being in a cooler for a couple of weeks till they sort out your immigration, or sending you to some jail in El Salvador. And really, this has happened. It's unbelievable. Love the message from Pierre on the unknown Canadian heroes. Where is Con Carney's message? He's European, not Canadian. Like, you just don't get it, folks. Great reporting. Fantastic. Another sign of authoritarianism. Who is the deputy PM? You don't even know what authoritarianism is, and the construct of it, and how it operates on a in-your-face way and also in a subliminal way, and you just don't get it because you're falling for it. And it really is the nature of the beast. So let's see what this gentleman here has to say.
What she's getting frustrated by. This headline right here. Elbows down. Carney told Canadians he could handle Trump. So far, he's been all talk and no action, and she was absolutely livid.
Now, what he's referring to here is the fact that Laura Babcock is saying Post Media, which is a right-wing conduit. It's a Maple MAGA. It's a MAGA, American-owned, far right-wing conduit of information to influence. And obviously this podcaster is being greatly influenced by it, and represented by the drama that's exhibited by his reaction to what she's saying.
Over this headline. How dare you? How dare you report the truth? I don't care what side of the aisle you're on this. We all saw what happened. No matter what the liberal...
Now here I'm going to represent something to you where conflating opinion into truth. And this is why it's so dangerous. Look up the word conflate. So what we're witnessing right here is this podcaster conflating opinion into a truth. And this is why it's dangerous.
Liberal Party, no matter what their supporters, no matter what the hardcore Carney apologists are going to say, you can see a duck, looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's likely a duck. We saw it happen. Donald Trump squashed all debate, squashed all negotiations until DST was figured out. 2 days later, Mark Carney says, okay, DST's off the table. All of a sudden, Donald Trump's like, okay, let's get back to conversations here. Is that a elbows up approach? Is that an aggression? Is that a huge, good negotiator approach? No.
So what kind of approach are you expecting? People holding clubs and swinging clubs around? Like, it doesn't work that way. You just do not get it because it's beyond your comprehension how negotiations work.
No. We all saw it plain as day. Yet, someone like Laura Babcock is going to get offended that newspaper pointed out the truth of what we just saw happen this past weekend. Livid, frustrated. However, she continues to ignore the things that are happening in the party behind the scenes that we just talked about. The caucus is frustrated. The caucus is fighting. Caucus.
And here's where this divide and conquer has its results. This podcaster is getting caught up now in just drama about what's happening behind the scenes in the Liberal caucus. You know, democracy, people have a right to state what they need to state. But here you're just creating this drama and making a hornet's nest out of a fig leaf.
This is getting annoyed. The caucus is losing patience. Mark Carney is ruling by decree. And guess what? Laura Babcock says, I want more of that. Do you want more of it? Well, clearly, if you want more of that, then you want more of Donald Trump being your daddy. Because that's exactly what is taking place right now. We don't have any national interest. We don't have a national identity. Right now, we are just a breeding ground for whatever American interests are. We don't have a government that actually cares about us. The only good things we get as citizens these days are just byproducts of what Trump is fighting for the American people right now and putting that pressure on the Canadian government. That's all we get these days. Where's the kid sitting outside the candy store hoping a rapper flies by that, oh, that might be nice. It's ugly. It's terrible. And so ugly so much so that the U.S. ambassador hopped on CBC.
Now, let me ask a question. What do you expect? Instant gratification? Is this the kind of expectations of people's, just instant gratification? You plant a farmer's field, plant corn, do you think it's instant gratification? It doesn't work that way.
CBC, and they talked about the negotiations happening again between Mark Carney and Donald Trump. And CBC anchor here gets really frustrated and takes issue with the fact that Donald Trump calls Canada nasty. And the U.S. ambassador expands on that issue.
You are being very positive about all of this, talking about things being on track. U.S. President said in his interview with Fox News over the weekend that Canada is, quote, very nasty to deal with. How is Canada nasty, Ambassador?
Well, I think Canada, well, I want to be very, very positive because the relationship is a great relationship.
And these are the words of your president.
No, I know. And we're going to be stronger after this than maybe what we are right now. It's going to be an even stronger relationship. But, you know, what is the president thinking about? Oh, they just slapped a brand new tax on us that we've told them for months is an unfair tax. Oh,
it's not a brand new tax. They've known about it for a couple of years, easy. But the fact of the matter is, Donald Trump micromanages. His people don't make any decisions. He makes the decisions. That's why you have chaos. And you don't know. He says one thing one day, another thing another day.
Oh, by the way, you have 11 out of your 13 provinces who ban American products on their shelves. We haven't banned a single Canadian product in the United States.
No, but you've put nationwide tariffs out there, so you built a brick wall. You haven't banned anything, no. You built a brick wall, and you're clubbing people with that brick wall.
United States. That's a pretty nasty move, okay? You have...
So you're going to fall for this stuff. No, he says that's a nasty move. Meanwhile, those tariffs came out of the blue. They came from Trump's administration, weren't in existence prior to his administration. Meanwhile, the digital service tax is being paid by American companies in Europe and other areas, and all of a sudden it's tragic that Canada would even think something like that? Now, people, you really need to put things into perspective. But people get blindsided because they find their identity in a movement. And this movement is politics. And we've seen it creep up from the United States, from MAGA South, came into Maple MAGA North, and was fueled by a guy by the name of Pierre Poilievre. And you'll say, how is that possible? You're just making arbitrary and subjective assertions. Nonetheless, nobody's actually looking at a perfect example of what I'm stating, and that is the carbon tax, the consumer carbon tax. That drum was beaten so hard that it actually caused the leader of the Liberal Party to have to resign. Meanwhile, after that, carbon tax was zero rated. Within a month and a half, any benefit to the general public from that carbon tax got eaten up by inflation, which is another thing that needs to be dealt with in a different way, and we're not even getting to that yet because we're so caught up on this. I feel offended. I'm hurt. Not even 2 months and 1 week into things. It's only just 2 months and a few days after the last election, and already the handbasket is being passed around.
A number of your provinces have put in provisions into their procurement process that say, oh, if you're an American company, oh, yep, you can't bid. That's pretty nasty.
But that was in response to the U.S. slapping major tariffs on this country.
Exactly right now.
So responding is nasty? I'm just trying to get to the heart of this, Ambassador.
Where we are today. Okay. I will accept your characterization of potentially putting tariffs in place. Okay? 90 to 95% of the products that we trade are USMCA compliant, which means there are not tariffs on them.
Yes, I mean, I think we can both acknowledge that the road to get there was pretty complicated, but you've talked about...
We simplified some of those, okay?
Look how offended the CBC anchor was of the idea that Canada's being called nasty. Right now, our Canadian faux identity has been that we're so kind, we're so nice, we're pleasant, we're thoughtful. Yet, that characterization, that reputation is being torn and tattered because we have poor leadership in this country. We have
Are you an authority that of judgment? Poor management? You're not qualified at this juncture to make that assertion. And I'm really putting it out there for you. These YouTube partisan conservatives representing as Truth News are just parroting party political ideology lines. And it's separation politics. And you see it in Juno News with, the issues. DEI. LGBT issues. Which, I got to tell you, so I'm not one party or the other party. I've got no issue with the Pride Parade. Doesn't affect me whatsoever. I don't understand, but you bring these things up because you want to control other people. You cannot embrace the differences of peoples. So you create a construct, and this is where you have to ask the question, are you a human being or are you an animal? Our Darwinian ideology of pitting people against people, are you a human being ascending judgment and coming up with truths that serve all peoples? And you can make that decision. It's how you act and react is up to you. I'm going to give you another example. I'm going to switch. Mr. Adam Kinzinger. Here, this guy was a Republican, Illinois. Had to leave. Had to retire from politics because of MAGA and because of that MAGA movement. And he's interviewing a guy that was part of the MAGA movement. And I think this is important for you to understand and listen to provide comparative analysis to make your own judgments. Don't be influenced by what other people say. Just because you feel you identify with a certain set of politics, but the perspective may not be actually constructive. And this is where you have to be able to understand what was, is, and will be. Cause and effect, etc., etc. So let's pop into this here.
Right. You know, how could you, and the answer for that, it sounds so simplistic, but it's accurate, is that a lot of the ones saying I didn't realize what was going to happen, it's because the media they consume did not at all tell them that. You know, and I know this because I lived in the MAGA media bubble for more than half a decade, and it was when I started to move outside of that comfort zone when I started to hear more accurate information, and it eventually led to my leaving.
Let me ask you a question. So, you know, you say, you know, we're talking to a veteran about leaving. You've talked to other people, and I'm sure there's people watching like, well, if you want to just leave MAGA, you just leave. And the reality is, and, you know, with what I experienced by being, in essence, excommunicated from the party, which I laugh because I'm like, I was probably a bigger enemy to you guys than even the Democrats were, because I was like not on board.
You were. Yeah, you were. It's true.
You know, so they're like, well, why don't you just leave? And I think you touched at the very beginning about how this is a community. And we get our identity. I mean, look, a lot of people that are watching this may be Democrats. And here's the interesting thing. When you introduce yourself to people, how long does it take for you to tell them you're a Democrat? I get people all the time, Rich, that come up to me and say, and there's nothing wrong with this, but they come up and they say, I'm a Democrat, but I appreciate what you're doing. And I appreciate them saying that. But the point is, why do you feel the need to lead? I'm a Democrat. Right. Well, the reality is because all of us almost now find our identity in our politics.
Yes.
And this is one, I'm glad he brought that up, because this is what I'm trying to emphasize right here. People are getting so caught up in identity to a certain political faction that they're forgetting about what is best for everybody. What actually eliminates pain and suffering and progressively helps the evolution of the human being, the species, on a micro and macroeconomic level. And this is really where I'm coming from.
And when you come at this from a position of feeling politically homeless and isolated, rejected by the coasts, right? Economic hardship, cultural hardship, whatever that is, you join a community. So why don't you talk a little about why it is that leaving is a process and some of the costs, so people are aware that it's not just going, oh, I'm just not MAGA anymore. It's a process here.
It is, and I differentiate.
It's almost like deprogramming from a cult, really. I mean, it's like coming to see the world a different way. I don't love to call it that, but it's like having to see the world differently all of a sudden with like brighter shades, I guess.
I can talk from my personal experience, two primary reasons why it was so hard to leave. Number one is because of the community and the sense of belonging. I had a second family. You know, my MAGA community, I spoke to them every single day, Adam. There was not a day that went by for years that we weren't in some kind of communication. And when I decided to leave, I knew I was going to leave behind that second family. Mm-hmm. That second family, my MAGA my fellow MAGA brothers and sisters at the time, they took precedence oftentimes over my own blood family. As embarrassed as I am to admit that, so MAGA, and I take accountability for this. I'm responsible because everyone has agency, but I allowed MAGA to result in neglecting familial duties as a parent and as a husband. And then the other reason it's so difficult to leave is because someone is so invested in that community, and I'm not just talking financially, I'm talking emotionally, spiritually, personally, politically, I had to painfully but liberatingly conclude that so much of what I believed was wrong. And it wasn't, Adam, one or two beliefs where you say, oh, okay, there's a belief on XYZ issue, I was wrong. It was an accumulation of years and years of beliefs. And it's not realistic to ask someone who is finding their community and their sense of belonging to just pick up and leave. That's different from partisan Trump voters. Partisan Trump voters are not MAGA people. They don't go to rally. It's not their identity. It doesn't consume them. They might associate as a Trump voter or a Republican, but they're not deep into the community like I and millions of others are. But the ones who are MAGA, it is so difficult to leave because the mythologies of MAGA and the information silo, it always creates this gravitational pull to just remain in MAGA. Even when I wrote my mea culpa, there was a moment before I published it where I once again, and the last time I asked myself, is this really what I want to do? So it was exhilarating, but it was also scary because I knew once I did it, it was permanent. So we're asking people to make a permanent change from something that it's all they've known for years and years and years. For some people, maybe a decade. Not so easy to just stand up and leave, but leaving MAGA as an organization, even though I will not say that we make it easy, we do try to make it easier for people to give testament to their own stories of how they left.
Okay, I'm going to leave it on that note. Okay, so this is what I have an issue with, and this has creeped up into the Canadian scene, and it's still very, very strong, and I see it becoming stronger when we need to unite as one. And what do I mean by that? First of all, within 2 months, Scott Moe in Saskatchewan, Danielle Smith in Alberta. Now they're bringing American liquor back up to Canada. We don't need this. We understood at the very beginning, when the election debate was going on, that we can circumvent a lot of the damage of the tariffs by eliminating our own interprovincial barriers from the west coast to the east coast of Canada. Number one. But already we're seeing people from Saskatchewan and Alberta. They're not part of the plan. They create a construct to actually give credibility to their identity, and this construct is represented by, I'm not getting what I want from Canada. You're only 2 months after an election. You did know you've got a situation where the United States, which is supposed to have been the global leader of democracy and of fairness, abdicating their responsibility without notice and exerting their will on every other party in the world for their self-interest and aligning themselves with a country like Russia. Look what Russia's doing to Ukraine. Look what Israel's done to Gaza. There are other situations that have created issues too, and not with the Ukraine-Russia thing, that's different, but with Israel and Gaza, Hamas, they should not be leading the Palestinian people. But America is aligned with Russia, with Israel. They've gone against their trading partners of years, Mexico, Canada, NATO, to destabilize for their own self-interest. And you really have to question why this is happening. So that's where we're at, folks. Questions, comments, throw in the comments section. Love and peace to everybody. Thanks. Talk to you all again soon. Ciao. Michael J., you're a host. Questions, comments to throw in the chat or the comments section. We'll gladly get to it when we can. On the interim, anything else you need, feel free to ask. Take care, be good, love and peace to everybody.